Hello, Beyonders, and welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. We are happy you're here with us today. We have an awesome show with you today. I've got my co-host Jason here, and I have got three special guests from the Dogs of Warcry podcast. We have Eric, Josh, and Vint here to join us. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Thank you very much.
Happy to be here.
Yeah,
it always makes me happy when we have guests on, and after the intro video, they're like
bopping along, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like your intro was designed for just bopping.
Yeah.
So many people don't know this, but Jason actually composed that intro music for us.
Nicely done.
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh.
That was fun. Had lots of input from my kids.
My kids
That's
too.
too dark, Dad. That's too dark. Make it happier.
Nice. For our show, I wrote lyrics and then I gave it to an artist on Fiverr who's like a scream rocker, and nobody can understand what she's singing, and it's my favorite part is that nothing of what I wrote is intelligible.
Nice.
Phenomenal. Sensational. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we are excited because today we are going to be talking about how to create narrative scenarios in your games. Obviously, the Dogs of Warcry, our boys here, they have created for the last couple of years, 2 years, I believe, created the narrative event at Adepticon, which I think is the most widely talked about narrative event that is in the Warcry sphere, especially in the North America, right? Maybe even the world, guys. I'm pretty sure the world. So, I know, right? Yeah. Take that, Warhammer world. You know, got nothing on Adepticon.
I still think they get more numbers, though. Maybe.
Well, you know, it helps to be like the headquarters of everything, right? So
sure.
Whatever. But yeah, so we're super excited to talk about that today because you know the idea of creating narrative campaigns works in so many games. It can work in Warhammer 40K. It can work in Age of Sigmar. It can work for Legion. It can work for the Battles of Middle Earth. It can work for some of your board games that you're playing. So we hope that you guys get some. Our listeners get some good stuff out of this podcast today. But before we get into all of that, it is time for our Geek Week. So I'm going to kick it over to Josh. How was your Geek Week, Josh?
It's been good. I've been busy building some terrain for Warcry, but also got a lot of models for Fallout Warfare, the miniature game. Played a game this last Sunday with a friend in town and had a lot of fun. I've been priming my models, getting them ready for some painting. So keeping busy with that.
That's very cool. I almost played a game of Fallout when I was at Adepticon.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was sitting down to literally like rolling the first dice, you guys called me up and said there's a spot open in the Warcry narrative. So instead of rolling the dice, I threw it at the game organizer and I said, I'm not playing this game, and I got up and I ran away. Right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
And to this day, that guy does not know what he said. He does not. It's like, what did I do?
That's where I played my first game. This is there. So I was like...
Yeah, exactly. So, so I almost played that, Josh, one time. It's great. Vint, how was your Geek Week?
My Geek Week was good. I watched Starship Troopers and built the Leviathan box twice. So it was a very busy build week for me. Yeah,
wow. Very thematic build night. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I literally I started building it and then I watched it and then Duncan came out with his video of like Starship Trooper bugs and I was like, well, now I've got to watch this too.
That's so great. I watched a little like short video the other day that was talking about how they ended up actually create like the main characters ended up actually steering the comet towards Earth that ended up providing the justification for the bugs. Because like the main guy was flirting with Denise Richards on the bridge and it made her like bump the controls that ended up sending the comet down towards Earth. And so like they're the ones that accidentally started the invasion.
Yeah.
And so like it's like, oh great, yeah, that's cool.
It's a really funny movie because when we were growing up when we watched, we were just like, yeah, lots of guns and bugs and gore, and it was just a fun action movie. But if you get on YouTube now, there's so many like conspiracy theories about like it's a tale against feudalism and just like all this weird stuff, and how like the actual government created the war to fuel like the military industrial complex, and like the Bugs were just trying to live a peaceful life on their own planet.
You give people enough time on the internet and they'll ruin anything, right?
Yep.
What is the another famous one from the like 80s 90s was that in Karate Kid that Daniel LaRusso was actually the bad guy.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
that's a really funny one.
He was the aggressor, 100%.
Yeah.
Right. Johnny was just minding his own business with his girlfriend,
doing
when
cocaine.
this upstart Italian kid
Right.
came and started making trouble.
It's hard to be a young white guy in California.
So Vint, are you actually playing 40K, or is this like for like Kill Team or something like that, or 2 boxes?
Yeah, I'm playing some 40K. Yeah. No, I was building. One of my friends has a birthday coming up, so he drives a truck for a living. So I thought, hey, he's gonna get back to two Tyranid sides all built up for him, ready to play. He's got to do the painting because he's got a specific thing, but I'll still have him primed probably tomorrow. And then I have a tournament this Saturday at Warp Storm Games in Milwaukee. That's going to be a doubles tournament. It should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be playing my Marines, and just because it's 40K, I do keep a narrative there too, and I write in that after every game. Something short, and I've been working on it for about 6 months now, so that's been fun.
Nice.
But yeah, got to keep it narrative. We're Dogs of Warcry.
That's right.
But yeah, that's been a lot of it. I had a game this last week, and that was a lot of fun too. It was against Custodes. They beat me up a little bit. But it's been nice because I'm getting kind of the end of there's no more Marines to build. Like I have them all. And
Wow. That's a lot of Marines.
It's a lot of Marines. It is a lot of Marines. But then now it's back to, okay, let's pull out some Chaos Legionnaires. Let's pull out some of the Warcry boxes I've been meaning to get to and haven't yet. And all the while my Mutolith Vortex Beast leers at me and's like, well, you built me, you should play me. So
He's got good stats on Warcry.
Yeah,
he's good in everything now. He's good in everything now.
So there you
Take
go.
him everywhere.
Yeah, very good. Very
He
good.
fits everywhere. Slaves to Darkness list, perfect. Warcry, great. Want to play him in 40K? He's super there now too. AOS everywhere. He's just good. He's a good lad. My favorite
Awesome.
little tentacle monster.
There you go. There you go. Eric, how was your Geek Week?
My Geek Week. Let's see. I just finished the Water Temple and Tears of the Kingdom. I got my it's my third temple that I've finished up. I'm slow playing it because I don't want to rush too fast. I like to get every region. I have been my son had his birthday and he got it's not his first box of Warhammer, but it's kind of his first unit box, and he got Bulgrin Ogren kit because I used those in AOS for an ogre warband, and he wanted to expand on that with his own models. So he got one of those kits to kit bash and build as he chose. So it's been fun working with him on that. He's 11, and he got second in one of our local tournaments. So he's a good Warcry player. And what else? I don't know. Is pickleball nerdy? It's kind of on that verge of like, it's like not, it's athletic, but a little like everyone makes fun of it. So played some pickleball.
They do, but it's kind of becoming mainstream.
We're gonna push it. We're gonna see where we can get it.
It'll get mainstream, and Eric will find a new one to play. It'll be like pickleball blindfolded with on a skateboard. Roller pickleball.
There you go.
Pickleboard.
Pickleboard, yes.
Awesome. Well, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Jason, how was your Geek Week, sir?
Good. good Geek Week, man. I don't remember if I said this or not last time, but for I had a birthday recently, and
Nice.
when I was growing up, yep, one more year alive. When I was growing up, I always dumped so much money into like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, like in the arcade. And finally, when I was an adult and I had a job, one time I was in my basement. I was like, why do I not have an arcade in my basement? Like, I'm an adult now. Like, I might be able to make this work, you know? So like Arcade 1-Up does a lot of those like cheaper home basements. So a couple years ago, I got a Mortal Kombat arcade.
Wow.
And it's been a great addition. My kids love it. We played all the time. You know, it's a multi-cade. It's got a ton of games. Well, for my birthday this year, I got, let me see if I can share my screen. I got the Street Fighter one to go along with it.
Ooh,
Oh,
nice.
nice.
So that's the Shinku Hadouken edition from Arcade 1-Up. And
Fighter 2.
it's got 3 Street Fighter games in it and like a ton of all the Capcom beat 'em ups. Like if you ever played Final Fight or Captain Commando or any of those, they're all in this cabinet. And my kids and I just mash that free play button and just run through the game. So it's and I got kids that like run the gamut. So like I got 8-year all the way up to 20, and so they just we have fun with the cabinet. So that was my Geek Week, man. Just mashing buttons with my kids, having a good time.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
That's super awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. My Geek Week, I was out of town, so I'm going to talk about what happened just before I left. My daughter and we have been working through the Diablo 4 campaign.
Nice.
And we finished the story. And
finally.
And by the way, okay, I know. Listen, okay, so Jason
start in 2 days.
I know.
Yeah, I know, right? Jason, who's like apparently like burned Mr. Speedster through the whole thing. I want to state for the record that Lilith did everything wrong. Okay, Jason. Jason's on Team Lilith.
I'm Team Lilith
wrong.
all the way, man.
Yeah, so I'm not. Listen, she's a pretty face, Jason. Don't let her seduce you. Okay. So,
she told me the way to find true happiness.
Let's just say my daughter and I were happy to put that demon down.
Nice.
And she died. I will say this though. We had heard from my brother who had played a couple characters, and he said it's best if you just work through the story and not do a lot of the other side quests and stuff like that, because you end up capping out at a certain level and you can't gain more experience until you've actually finished the campaign. Like they're really pushing you to finish the campaign. So my daughter and I just were really pushing hard to finish that campaign. And there were some points where the fight leading up to Lilith was actually way harder than Lilith herself.
Totally agree.
And I was like, dude, we were dying like crazy out there. And then once we got in here, like I didn't even die once. And I was like, that was kind of a letdown. Like, I was
Lilith
like, okay,
was not the hardest fight in that story.
Well, apparently
close,
level
right?
100 Lilith is a beast. I haven't tried that. I'm not there
that's
yet.
the real Lilith, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we haven't quite even made it to the point where we're like using Paragon points. I think I'm at like level 47 or something like that right now.
Gotcha.
But we have all of the dungeons that we haven't even touched, ready to go and just get all those nice experience points from those, even at a higher level. So
nice.
So that's going to be good, and we're just going to work our way through that. But I started playing the Barbarian for a little bit, and then with her, I switched to doing a Druid. And I did not like the Druid at first, but now I really like him. He's got a lot of like area of attack abilities, right? That are really nice once you kind of level up. In the beginning, they're really weak, and you're just like, I don't think I'm going to survive with this guy, So,
Nice.
But once you're up and you're like, calling lightning bolts down and twisters, and
and
you
you're a
got
bear.
wolves like jumping everywhere and werebearing and stuff, like it's pretty great.
Nice.
So.
Everyone's pretty weak until they can call down lightning.
I mean, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
So I have this legendary like set of gauntlets or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it just randomly shoots down lightning. like every
Yeah.
5 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting in a cutscene, and all of a sudden, like these like barrels would just go like boom and just like start exploding in the cutscene because my lightning is like going off, you know, and I have no control over it. It's just hilarious because like things are exploding as we're talking to these like priests or something like that, you know. So
Right.
that's pretty funny.
Cinematic.
Yeah, exactly. That's very good. So, but
Who needs a car?
yeah, I will say too that I did go see the recent Mission Impossible movie,
Oh,
which
okay.
was I thought a lot of fun. It wasn't the best one in the series, but it was up there. I'm not going to talk about that right now. What I want to talk about are the two things that I saw before the movie, which was number one, the Napoleon Bonaparte trailer. Like it's Ridley Scott's doing it, and it's like Joaquin Phoenix is Napoleon.
Right.
And it looks,
Yeah, it looks good.
amazing.
It looks real good.
It looks really good. But then, more importantly, the Dune 2 trailer came on after
Oh,
that.
I can't wait.
And oh my gosh, I was like, Sophie, because my daughter came to that as well. I was like, Sophie, we need to go home and watch Dune 1. And she goes, Dad, I haven't even seen Dune 1. I'm like, oh, I failed you as a father. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I really liked Dune 1, but it didn't quite have, like, it was beautiful. I don't know if it captured the magic of the original movies for how just weird and wacky they were.
The David Lynch version. Yeah.
Eric, you're
These were
trolling us
definitely
right
not
now,
weird
aren't
and
you?
wacky.
dude, floating Harkonnen or whatever his name is.
Harkonnen.
Harkonnen. It's hard to beat that dude. And
You're like, what is this? What is happening here?
And those travel worms. Gosh, where were those?
Oh, they're coming. I think they're coming. Yeah. I think in the second movie of Dune, we get a lot more action.
Let's get some more weird. Let's get weirder.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm cool with not as weird.
Well, Justin, I guess this is where we part ways.
Right, exactly.
Because we're talking narrative here, and it's all about getting weird.
That's fair. That is very fair.
We need to bring back the Geiger Dune. The Geiger Dune that never happened.
We need to mesh those.
That would be interesting.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like we all had some very good Geek Weeks, and hopefully you, our audience, had some good Geek Weeks as well. And feel free to let us know how it went, either in the comments of this video or in our Discord, because we always love talking about it. We have a little bit of geek news that we want to share with you, and I'm going to share this. It's one mainly. I'm going to just share this sweet email I got from Free League Publishing, because it is the announcement of an expansion for the Blade Runner and Replicant here. I'm going to zoom in for us there. So we have the Fiery Angels and Replicant Rebellion for the Blade Runner RPG. So if you back the Kickstarter for Blade Runner, you got the first case file that's in there. This is going to be case file number 2 and 3 that they're going to have for this. So it looks really cool. You can. It's not going to go through Kickstarter. It's going to be for pre-order off of their website that you can have. And as of course, like with all Free League products, if you buy the physical copy of the book, they will give you the PDF for free, and usually before it comes out in the book, so you can start reading it well before you get your hands on the book. And Jason and I will attest that the Free League products, especially like these Blade Runner and Aliens that they have, they are just amazing products. Like they're something that are worthy to be on your shelves, because you'll pull them up and the art inside them are just absolutely gorgeous and amazing. And so this is some of the artwork that they have there. And so yeah, the price point is $35 essentially, but it comes with a lot of great stuff. So you got tons of handouts, in-world artifacts, Esper photos, half a dozen full color double-sided maps, which is great to lay it out in front of the table with you. So if you and your buddies are playing Blade Runner, this is the one for you. So lots of really cool stuff there. So I think you guys said that you play some RPGs every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, we've done
Yeah.
some Soulbound, done D&D, Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a few others. Variety.
I do a lot of Starfinder.
Oh, nice,
And
okay.
lots of D&D 5 too.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, Jason and I, every year at Gen Con, we go to play Starfinder, and we always schedule it for like the last day of the con, and then we're just like, we're too tired to go.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so like we just need to start scheduling it like at the beginning.
At the
of the
beginning,
convention,
yeah.
so we
Yeah,
actually
right.
do it.
So,
Yeah,
You know?
so then every year there's someone who's running Starfighter and is wondering, what did I say?
Where did my players go?
What did I do?
Most of them know the last days.
Justin leaves a trail of broken GMs and game runners who are like, why can't I get Jason to stay at my table?
Yeah.
Sorry, Justin and Jason.
Yeah, they're like, the weirdest thing happened to me at Adepticon. Like this exact thing happened to me. You know?
There's got to be a support group somewhere, man. There's got to be a support group. I can just see like somebody all ready to run a demo game and just like, all right, and you ready? You're like, no, and just throw the dice at them and run. Like,
see, maybe you can get a sub from like one of the energy drink companies. There you go. You could work it.
There you go. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Like time for gaming? No.
Never miss another Starfinder table at Gen Con.
Yeah. Now that I'm talking about this, I realize that it was the Cincinnati gaming group that I totally shunted. So whoever's listening from that group, I apologize from the bottom of my heart, and hope that you don't hold it against me the next time I register.
Yeah. Let us know. We'll send you some free dice.
Right. There you go.
To make up for the dice that Justin threw at you on his way out.
Yeah, exactly.
we should get a Justin Smith left my table shirt, and then you just leave them t-shirt when you're like, sorry, dipping.
Yeah, you can join the Justin Smith Ditch Me Club.
Yeah.
And it has a picture of Justin from the back running away.
Yeah, right.
He's tossing the dice. Like over his back. Yeah.
Love it. I love
We're
it.
totally making it.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Leaving for Warcry.
There we go. Yeah, you could co-brand. It's like I left leaving for a Dogs of Warcry event.
Yeah, right.
There you go. That'll be our mashup.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, funny.
Awesome. Well, that's all the geek news that I had for today. So let's get into our main topic, which is how to create and run narrative events. So just to give sort of a little bit of background, why don't you guys explain to us like who the Dogs of Warcry are, which are, I mean, you guys, but like, what's your, what's your purpose? What are you doing? Like, how did you guys start? Like, give us a little bit of background of who you are.
Yeah, if I may, gentlemen. So the Dogs of Warcry is a podcast. It's part of the Mortal Realms network. The Mortal Realms was created, kind of launched our first podcast, which we call now the Story Phase, but called the Mortal Realms podcast back in 2005, I believe. Is that 2015? Whenever AOS came out. And it was initially kind of in that brouhaha of changing games and the negativity and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to just bring positivity because we liked the game. There was part of the community that liked the game. And so we started to just try and exude or project positive narrative gameplay and kind of all the reasons why you want to play a game and get together with other people. And so, we ran some events and we did some stuff locally, etc. And when Warcry came out, we knew we wanted to create another podcast focused on, gameplay and that sort of thing. And it shipped with the narrative as a part of it almost, right? Or it was a very small, compact game. And pretty soon after that, we got narrative stuff. And so that's always been sort of within the Mortal Realms, our shtick is focus on narrative, focus on the stories, because that's a place where, regardless of your skill set in the hobby, it's easy. It's an easy place to land. So that's kind of where the Dogs of Warcry came out of, was out of this broader AOS network of podcasts that are focused on narrative and community, etc. I'll let Josh or Vint maybe talk about where.
I was going to say real quick that in 2015, when, or maybe even, I guess it was like 2015 when AOS came out. You're absolutely right. It was like, it was a lot of people hated Age of Sigmar. And I mean, I think, to give a little bit of credit, I think when Age of Sigmar came out, it was a little half-baked.
Sure.
They didn't have any points associated with models, right? You just kind of had like, well, these are sort of units that you play, and you kind of just choose it. And so I think from a competitive person's standpoint, it was a hot mess, right?
Oh, yeah.
However, I think from a narrative standpoint, you guys found a really nice niche there because, those points help with balance, but narrative sometimes you don't necessarily want or need balance, right? Like, and I think oftentimes you kind of want it because it's nice. You don't want to have a negative play experience, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want a challenge, or sometimes you want to run a scenario that may not fit it. And so I think you definitely found a nice niche there, bringing the positivity, as you're saying, because there was the competitive aspect of it hadn't been really fleshed out until 2017 when the first general handbook came out, right?
Yeah. Well, and even, I mean, the lore of the old world was precious to a few people. And I say a few, I mean, I think it was precious to a lot of people, but it was, of course the game was sort of shrinking, or the community was sort of shrinking. So there's certainly a number of people that cherished the old lore. And so the new stuff was sort of not given a chance, and it was kind of getting drowned out. So our first podcast was all about just getting through all the books that they were putting out. And anytime there was new lore, we would talk about it. And so it was a way of making AOS new lore more digestible to more people. And then to your point, my buddy Davey and I, who started the Mortal Realms podcast, at the very edges of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, we're starting to kind of come up with games where it would be, all right, you have a couple of troops of dwarves in the middle of the table, and you're going to try and run them off one edge. I have a necromancer and a horse, and we had some new rules for raising the dead. I'm going to see if my lone necromancer can raise enough models or raise enough stuff over a certain, 4 rounds or whatever it was, to keep you from getting off the table. Because if you leave the table, you'll tell your dwarven hold that necromancers have taken over this town, and we don't want that. So we just were coming up with oddball scenarios to see what we could do, and AOS sort of created a ton of freedom for that, with the rules, with having something for all this stuff. And so I think for us at that moment in time, AOS was an open door to personal narrative, as opposed to, the what is the story where demigryphs, or the demigryph knights got models, and everyone's like, the narrative hook was they've always been in the forest, just nobody knew they were there. And people gripe about that. But AOS sort of created this space, endless space, for us to fill it with whatever we wanted to. And it gave players, I think, a lot of ownership of adding their own narrative into the AOS lore. That's my soapbox about it.
So let me ask you this, and I'll throw this to either Vint or Josh. Why play narrative? Like, why actually? I mean, you've got the game rules in front of you. You've got usually, missions in front of you with objectives and everything like that. Like, you can play a nice game with each other. Like, why add in the extra narrative?
Go for it, Vint.
All right. So when I look at a narrative game, and I'm going to sit down with my friends and play a narrative game, for me, it's a player choice. One of my best friends plays a very, very good competitive only when he plays. And we still have a heck of a lot of fun playing together. What it is that at the end of the game, I'm over there with my notebook being like, oh, did you see that part where the guy did the thing? And that makes the play experience very enjoyable to me. Right. For him, he's like, cool. Did you see I scored 5 points on secondaries? And you go back and forth with it. But realistically, it's what drives me. It helps me stay motivated to do the hobby. It helps me stay motivated to want to continue with a warband, right? You have 5 bad games with a warband in Warcry and you're like, ooh, that's kind of rough. But then you're like, oh, it's cool. Look at the story I have now. Look at this narrative of, well, I've been pushed back out of my stronghold. I've been pushed out into the wild, and now I've got to kind of, make my stand and regrow. And one of the, with all narrative gaming, it's just fun because you get attached, right? When your character dies, you're like, ooh, that's right in the feels. Like, he's been with me for 6 months real life time and 16 games, and he got bit by a Raptorix in the wrong heel, and now he's gone. Here we go. Now I've got to level up a whole new guy. So it's just a lot of fun, and it adds a lot for me personally. But the real reason to play narrative is because you get motivated by those stories. You're either motivated to write, or you're motivated to paint or hobby in a way, especially with Warhammer, that makes sense with the game, right? Like, oh, I play Josh all the time, and he kills a bunch of my Skaven, and then I accidentally left my Skaven box out one day, and all my heads are gone, and now Josh has Skaven heads on all of his bases, right? Like, this is it's fun stuff like that can add and motivate each other to the hobby. Real talk, Josh doesn't have any of my Skaven heads on his bases.
I know.
Just
I've got
because
my own Skaven.
He'd feel bad for how many he takes, really.
It'd be all Skaven heads and none of his models.
Yeah, right. Honestly, just piles of Skaven heads with weapons sticking out. The other one is real talk. One of my friends just finished up painting, and he posted on Instagram and added me. He has my Mortifactors, which is the chapter I play. He has a whole group of 8-bound where every Primaris helmet on it is Mortifactors because he killed an entire unit of Intercessors like a jerk. But now I told him right away, I was like, I'm going to have to kill that unit every time we play. That's super dead. I don't care what I have to throw at it. And it makes the game fun, and it adds right? I like fettuccine Alfredo, but I'm going to put spices or something in it to make it a little bit better. And for me, narrative is that spice to my games to make me excited and, look forward to the next game all the time, no matter how the last one went.
Yeah.
So that's why I think narrative.
Yeah, and I think it's just like a really good role playing session too, where you develop these characters and stories, and you can go back and say, oh yeah, 15 years ago we had that campaign, and remember our characters did this kind of thing. You kind of get those same stories in a lot of these tabletop games where you're playing against people, and things happen. You keep playing, and you end up getting these kind of narrative rivalries going, and you get naming the characters, and you kind of remember that long term. It's a lot of fun to kind of build those stories together as a community as well. But yeah, kind of developing unique ways to play too, in terms of okay, this isn't a standard scenario, but this is what happened in our last game. Let's tweak this mission so that this is what's happening now. So, okay.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, and you can use the game to tell the story too. Sorry, Eric.
Right.
But if your game is matched and balanced every time, and one of the awesome things with Warcry is it's not meant to be balanced. You never were supposed to be, I have my 4s, you have your 4s, and whoever has the most 4s wins, right? It's always meant to be a little different. It's always meant to be maybe somebody has a huge advantage or a huge disadvantage, but that's battle, right? And that's part of the challenge and part of the fun. So when you're playing narrative, you're also not going to have I start in a line and you start in a line very often. One of the beautiful things about Warcry is you almost never start in a line, even if you're playing match play. And your opponent is also going to be starting in the weeds, looking for their best avenue as well. And I just think that's one of the beautiful things about Dogs of Warcry, or Warcry itself. We're pretty okay too.
And the Dogs of Warcry.
If I can add too, I think we've always been, like you said, focused on community and kind of trying to find what we think is kind of an ideal of playing games in community. And while I don't mean this is kind of stems out of my personal preference, I'm not a highly competitive person, but when conversation or when Warhammer Fantasy Battle was very competitive, most of the scene was highly competitive, and so there's sort of a binary you get when you play competitive. You either win or you lose, and that if everybody's trying to win but only not everybody can win, then you're sort of I think not always finding the fulfillment in the game that that aligns with your goal. With narrative, you can create a lot more win scenarios if you change win from beating your opponent at a game, and those win scenarios can be everything from being able to perform a certain sub quest in a game, or be able to put a certain set of models on the table that you maybe wouldn't have otherwise, or play against somebody and have a story come out of it that is fulfilling in of itself. And so when you create more ways for people to get joy out of the game, I feel like the communities that we're in are more fulfilled, and the people that really come back for that. And that's what one of our big aims is. And so almost from just a pure community play, narrative has been a really positive way to kind of grow and keep growing.
I think one of the things that we've learned over the years as we've been GMing many different systems, we've run a lot of role playing, is you learn the concept of failing forward in the story, right? So every failure has a consequence, but it still allows the story to roll forward a little bit. Maybe just rolls forward in a little bit of a different way. And as I've played narratives, I think that's a sense you get. Whereas competitive, you're going in there to move up a leaderboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And narrative, you're going in there to, maybe the pressure is off more on moving up the leaderboard so much as it is just creating those epic moments, those story moments. And even if you lose in points in the narrative battle, there's still progression with your warband. So you still feel that, like you said, Vint, that kind of attachment of they are continuing on in some way past the beatdown, if that's what happens. And so that's something that I've enjoyed as I've played more narrative. That concept of kind of failing forward and still making some form of progression, even just after every game, just for coming to the table and rolling dice that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And also say as event runners, I think with competitive, and I don't know this because I don't follow this, so this is a generalization, but I think you can fall into a couple of formats that everybody kind of says is the fairest, right? Or like you mentioned, like is bracketed a certain way, and that becomes a standard way of playing. And when you come to expect that with narrative, there are many different narrative or teams that run narrative events at LVO, at I think there's at LVO, certainly at Nova Open. A huge group of narrative gamers over there. But every group can run different games, and even amidst our team, we've run lots of different types of games, from our weekly leagues that are kind of loosely tied to the Adepticon event, where we ran people through a very tight 3 games with branching quests. Josh and I ran a game where we had a whole 3D model of space that people moved to different pillars, and based on how they performed, they'd go left or they'd go right, or whatever it is, right? There's just so many different ways you can create in that space too, which is really rewarding.
So and the other thing too, Eric, oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the big thing is it opens up space for everybody to write too. It's collective storytelling, like a Fiasco or some of the other games you can play that are more collective, because we have the events we talk about, but we've also had other people that have just come in and like, here's our one-day event of whatever this thing is that I made up, and it gives you that opportunity and a framework to work in, and everybody gets to write and everybody gets to partake, win, lose, or draw, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I was going to say that as the organizer in the TO for the Nova Open GT, which is very much advertised as competitive Warcry, right? The idea there is that I put out a mission pack ahead of time that has the parameters of each mission. It has the win conditions early on. It has like very tight parameters and objectives for everything on the tournament, because that is the most balanced and fair way, right? Like we went through and determining like mission order and types of missions to like get the types of balanced competitiveness that we want out of it. And I don't think that you necessarily, I'm not saying that the amount of thought is different for narrative, because I think that you put as much, if not more, thought into narrative about stuff like that. But it doesn't have to be as focused on fair play for all, right? And one example that I'd like to give is Jason and I once played a Warcry scenario, and it wasn't narrative, but I think this is a good example. I had a warband of orcs, and he had a warband of ogres, and we pulled a mission card that said half of your warband, rounding up, has fled the table, and you just need to survive, And I said, what? Are you kidding me? I have 3 models now, and he's got a freaking lead belcher. Like what am I gonna do here? And a tyrant on the table, and but we played it, and I ended up losing like at the very end. It was way closer than I thought it was gonna be, but that was a scenario where if I had been focused very much on the fair competitive play, I would have been very upset that I wasn't given a fair chance at winning this game. Instead, I was like, all right, well, sounds like half my warband's a freaking coward, and now here's the tough guys that are trying to tough it out here. And in that sense, like, it gave me a sense of like, well, let's see if I can do it. You know what I mean? Let me challenge myself to see if I can even do this. I'm gonna play as hard as I can. I'm gonna like try to outwit. I got to try to use cover against those shooters. I've got to do all sorts of kind of crazy, maybe lure some people that way and hide another guy behind here, and just do what I can. And I did, like I said, it wasn't a narrative scenario that we were playing, right? Because we weren't playing with named mobs or anything like that. But I had to take almost a narrative mentality here, which was like, okay, well, what's the story behind this? And like, how is this going to make it fun?
Right.
It's almost a trauma response. It's like, tell me a story that makes this okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
I still think it was more fun than the time we drew. It was my ogres versus your Nurgle flies, and we drew all you have to do is get to the other side of the board.
Right.
And on turn 1, your Nurgle flies just double move to the other side of the board.
Yeah.
I was like, all right,
let's set up again. Yeah.
Let's set the table up.
Well, and that's definitely one aspect. So that's sort of the out of the box narrative setting for Warcry, right? It's sort of short, compact games, and because you can get enough of them done in the same period of time as you'd get an AOS game, you can get some duds, or you can random draw some really quirky, imbalanced things. And that's sort of I often talk about narrative in stages, like the same way you talk about like like going green, how green are you, or your carbon footprint, right? It's not all or nothing, it's stages of it. And so there's certainly that random draw. It's almost like the random tables in a role-playing game, right? Where you're like, okay, this happens. How do I justify, shoehorning that into this setting or this series of events? So there's certainly that and that was one of the things that really drew us to Warcry. One, a small model count, and you can be super creative with that. But also like just fast gameplay, randomness, a variety of games and story types to choose from, which is that random draw and non-game sometimes, but the next one's going to be better, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So let's say that I'm looking right now at my Star Wars Legion that need to be painted. I have a whole bunch of Wookiees. I've got some clone troopers that are going to end up being painted in the Kashyyyk style of like camouflage, right? I've got Yoda there with me. So I'm clearly thinking episode 3 before Order 66, right? Like that's kind of like the motif that I'm going for right now. If I want to, I want to get them on the table. I've got a theme in mind. Where do I start about creating some narrative play, using this in mind with maybe some of my other friends who have, other Star Wars Legion stuff? Like where do I start in creating narrative?
Do you mean in terms of like your particular force, or you mean as a group with your friends and everything else?
So maybe a little bit of both. Like maybe
Okay.
you start with your force, right, and then
Right. Yeah.
and then like
I mean,
kind of
that's
expand it to your friends.
exactly. That's kind of where I usually start. I start thinking, general ideas. I'll look through images on the web, to kind of get a storyboard of ideas around, okay, what is my warband theme, or what is my force theme? Where do they come from? What are they doing? And then from that, I can kind of, sometimes I'll build terrain to go with it to kind of, have a diorama or something to set them on, or at least kind of help direct me in terms of what's their feel. And then I think based on that, you can talk to your friends, or, we'll talk to the other people, we'll talk to my brother, and I'm like, okay, well, what are your ideas? Okay, how do they fit together? My stepson plays, and we'll often kind of like, okay, you got Necrons, I've got Admech. We've got a perfect story going here. What kind of world are we on? What are we doing? How do we fight that out? And I think you just do something similar. Like, it sounds like you got a theme in mind. I'll often watch some movies to kind of get some ideas. You've got Star Wars material to pull from. And then you just kind of say, okay, this is kind of where I'm coming from. What about you guys? And maybe we're on this undiscovered planet in this sector of the universe, and we're kind of going at it here. And then we'll kind of design what's going on in the forests here. Maybe you'll kind of map-based campaign or something and go from that point. Lots of ideas potential.
Just as an example, we had a campaign of Necromunda, Josh and I and a couple other people, and Josh created a warband of Gene Stealer cults, but they were like tree fungus infested sculpts. And so that was such a cool idea that it sort of became a theme for all of ours, of like, what was our experience running into this, new threat to the hive, and sort of then our games bounced off of that. Burn the trees.
Right. Yeah. Even abducted somebody and converted.
Yep. So it can take very little for that spark to happen and like make the event. We were playing a one-shot D&D game recently, and I came up with I had a character that was an astral elf with high charisma bard, and we were a party taking on a job, and we decided that somehow I was a former cult leader. Things didn't go right, and everyone's a little less believing in me, but we got to do this job to make some money. It was a stupid one-off comment that somebody made, but then it just shaped the rest of the night for us. And I made a lot of money being a cult leader, so whatever.
I mean,
congratulations.
Right.
Yeah. But I think it's it can be a small hook, and sometimes less is more. And we say that in a lot of ways, but sometimes it's like if it's too broad and too whatever, having something for everybody to focus on or bring it back to can be super helpful to, like, I don't know, just join everybody together to connect the party, right? It's the why are we all at a bar, right? Give somebody a little more of a hook as to why we're playing this game. What was this season of Warcry, the Eye of Chotek has wrecked in the Gnarlwood, and it made the forest grow unbelievably into this monstrous place to be. And we're all moving towards the Eye of Chotek, or Mordheim. There's this crazy moon and all this weird stone, and there's treasure in this city that's been blasted, right? Small hook, but from there you can build so many things.
How do you guys kind of come up with ideas for tying the different arcs or games in between games, right? How do you make the space in between games kind of flow so that when we had the narrative event at Adepticon, we had kind of a little choose your own adventure kind of in between, right? That really didn't matter if you won your game or not. You still had an opportunity to play this little choose your own adventure game. And then at the end of it, you got some sort of an artifact or something that could help, boost your guy. How do you come up with that kind of stuff that ties in between the games?
So the trick is, your first Adepticon, you got to get ready like 3 weeks before it starts. And then you're just under the gun. You're like, we got it. Realistically,
Is that what happened?
That sounds like real life experience.
We had a lot of ideas, but then it was like, we got it.
I keep
Yeah.
telling them, say you meant to do it, and just everyone will believe you.
No, I think a big thing was at the time, Josh and I were playing a lot. It was, we were kind of fresh out of COVID when we started doing it up here, and there was a lot of choose your own adventure stuff in the books, in the Tome of Champions throughout. There's a lot of those kind of quests. So it's just like, this is new. I think Josh and I can write for this. And so we wrote down some things and we got them ready, and we both like choose your own adventure books. And I guess like when you're writing for your story, right? It doesn't matter if you're starting a story for Legion. It doesn't matter if you're starting a story for Warcry, 40K, or D&D. Write what you're passionate about, right? Your friends are your friends. They're probably got some pretty similar interests in you as you, right? Your passion will incite their passion. And if you share the passions with whatever it is, you're going to get a better story, right? If you're writing a story about if we were doing a D&D campaign and it started off, well, we're all at a D&D table. All of us are like instantly like, yes, we're here, like right away. You've already got the bag of Cheetos over here. You're there. You're in the setting. And Warcry or whatever your narrative is going to give you that. And thankfully for us, Warcry is just this giant sandbox of whatever you want it to be. They gave us some stuff in the Bloodwind Spoil, but they never said this is what it had to be. They literally say it breaks and changes so often that you can't know, right? It is an unknowable flux. All you know is that at the center there's an Archaon, and that's awesome, right? The power struggles of the Varanspire are awesome, and that's where we started off. And we had the Choose Your Own Adventure quest, and it worked out really well. And then with Eric's glorious return, we were able to kind of kick back up and have like a lot more streamlined and fun with the stories. It was a lot less, all right, I've got to write 12 stories real quick. And it was just really it was really smooth and really fluid. So a lot of it is like, what would be fun for me? What do I think would be fun for me? Because it's probably going to be fun for you guys too, right? What would be a thing I would laugh at? What would be some tongue-in-cheek humor I can add throughout? Because it should be fun, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Yeah, this past year was kind of fun because, with the three of us, as Eric said, he's extremely narrative focused. And Vint is, worked in a Games Workshop store. He plays a lot of competitive events as well as narrative events. And I've done a little bit of both in the past. And so we all had our different experiences to contribute to it. And we all knew, okay, well, we'd like to have match play set up, and we'd like to have match play kind of, making sure we rotate the different battle groups. So, the hammers coming on second turn, one game, the shields coming on second turn, so we'd like to have it kind of balanced that way. But, from there, then we can open it up and say, okay, well, we know we want to have an experience where it doesn't matter what kind of game you had, you're still moving forward. Like you said, the story is evolving, whether you won or lost. Doesn't matter. Did you hit your special objective or not? As a bonus narrative point. But otherwise, you're continuing to succeed in your quests throughout the Gnarlwood, no matter how your games are going. But we had some unique twists, like, the trees are alive, and the roots are coming up, and, to like, okay, now we feel like we're there. And this year we were able to add more narrative aspects to it, where Eric was adding more storytelling in terms of, here's the twist that affects this turn based on the choices people made and how the forest is reacting. And, so we kind of started balanced, but then made sure that everybody could have an enjoyable story progression, but then added additional narrative layers on top. And then, of course, we had a bonus narrative event that kind of succeeded that later on. So.
Yeah, that you sort of have to build it depending on the group that you're hosting, right? When you're running an event, you got to think about the number of people, the variety, what their experience is with narrative, how far can you take it, like how weird can you get before they're feeling like how bought into that are they. I mentioned before, Josh and I ran a narrative event for 16 people when Warcry first came out, and there was 36 unique tables and 36 unique game conditions or different different battle group or battles that you do play scenarios. And then, each person who came had their own unique progression. So you could get very granular for a small group that you knew were hardcore narrative players. At Adepticon, we've got 40 people coming from all over the US, Canada, wherever else, and you don't know what their, personal experience is. And so we kind of treated it as sort of the next step above, random. So we did create the games to be every deployment was match play deployment. Every game except one, I think, was a match play game. I think Goreworm was the only one we took that. Is it Goreworm match play?
Well, it's just the deployment, but yeah, the mission itself is not really.
Yeah. So it might be the only one that was super thrown off, or like
Swingy.
Quirky, not typical for a match play. And so we tried to kind of keep the core of it match play, which means sort of balanced and symmetrical, and everyone's got the same objective, not skewed or asymmetrical. But then on top of that, so then once you kind of create that framework that hey, everyone's going to go through these games, then it was a matter of trying to figure out how do we interject some of the elements in narrative that people like. How do you get a heroic trait? How do you get a special weapon or a legendary weapon? And the previous year, the legendary weapon came sort of at the end. It was the cool thing at the end of the line, but then people were like, hey, could we use that sooner? So we gave it to them one game sooner, so that in that final battle they could wield their flaming sword or do their legendary action type of thing, and sort of get those bones in place. And then we basically had our script beats. We're like, all right, we've got 3 entry points, 3 motivations. We picked an abstract concept because it can be easier to write to those abstract concepts. And then, we each I think we ended up, like basically 2 storylines for each of those. So 6 different storylines that you could go through. And so we it started basic and went formulaic. And then that gave us freedom to kind of get creative with it. But not so weird, not so out there that it would throw somebody for a loop that had only played a few games before that. So just to give you an example of different approaches to, a narrative game that's specialized versus a narrative event that is broad and brings a lot of different people come to the table.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about your Adepticon narrative was that I could really see the framework that you're talking about, right? You said, okay, like we've got our 3 paths that you can follow as power, intelligence, and
wealth.
What was the third one? What's that?
Wealth.
Treasure.
Wealth.
Yep. Wealth, yeah.
Yep.
And so you could choose those, and then you could see how like it could break down into the different possibilities for each ones that you sort of got to choose your own adventure, right? And so and then I also saw that how the missions were set up were, like you said, match play quality missions in terms of like synchronous deployments and battle groups coming on at different times and certain twists and things like that. And so it didn't create too much asynchronicity that people would be like, hey, I got on the wrong end of the stick of this, right?
Yeah.
And so I can totally see where that framework then gave you the latitude to weave your story in and out of it, right? So having kind of the lattice of your structure allowed you to get really free flowy with the story. And that's kind of what I felt when I played it. I don't know if that's how you intended it, but that's definitely how I felt it.
Yeah, definitely. Because we wanted the basic, like you said, the framework to be simple enough that people could enjoy the narrative more. They could get into, why am I doing this? Where am I going? And how did my game impact my next choice? So didn't want them too worried about everything else too much. So
yeah, there was a simple the twist for the second round as a result of the first round was that the Gnarlwood did damage to everybody if you're within so close trees. So like it became really brutal. And then so everyone was it helped everybody feel like, oh no, this is a dangerous place. And then based on how people made their choices, etc., the next round the Gnarlwood gave blessings to people. So it was like sort of gave and a little give and take, and you want to feel a little bit like you're impacting the world. You want to feel like you have some agency, but you want to be able to kind of create some bumpers for it, so that it because again, not everybody's familiar with or has signed up to play hardcore narrative where anything, or not everybody is experienced in failing forward, right? And so we're you kind of limit how much falling hurts.
So one of the things that I noticed, and I'm really, this is actually one of the main questions I wanted to ask you guys. So I came to the narrative that you guys ran with a pretty underpowered warband. I was bringing a very much narrative warband. It was a straight up Rotmeyer Creed, right? No
Nice.
allies, nothing in there. And it was very much hey, these guys are here to just kind of establish themselves. I came with a sort of backstory with them and all that. And then I found myself playing against what I would say competitive GT lists that were in there, right? Like they were super optimized orc lists. There were super optimized Nurgle lists that were there, and how do you guys first off, I'm curious about your thoughts on that, right? Where someone's saying like, hey, I want to be like super narrative with my thing and full of flavor, and then someone who's like, I'm bringing like a literal beat stick and and ready to lay the hammer down. And so how do you feel about that? And what is the yin and yang of competitive versus narrative in these sort of events that you guys have to play around with?
I can that's definitely a concern we had. Even the first year we kind of had no allies, and we had no more than 4 of the same model type, so you couldn't take like the same model with the same weapon 4 different times or whatever. To try to frame that a little bit, you still had people showing up with super powerful lists, and unfortunately there's not a really good way to control that. And this year we said, okay, well, everybody wanted allies last year. We're going to allow an ally. We're going to remove the requirement to not have more than 4 of the same model, but we stressed again, like we did the first year, please send us your list so we could review them and at least make a comment if we like, okay, wait, no, this is, some people would still be putting in 2 allies. No, there's just 1. No thralls, no
and
monsters.
there are so many options with the compendium that it's hard to know what the competitive lists are at the time by the time we get there. Just as another variable to try and account for.
And
again, I guess.
Go ahead, Vint. Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just going to say, and again, just due to that variety, it can be very challenging to put restrictions that apply to all the war bands that make it balanced. Yeah.
There's a lot of synergy with different combinations because of the compendium, right? It's hard to say, like on the surface, you would say like, oh, okay, cool. Like that Gut Lord in the Gits list. Okay, sure. He's super powerful while some of the other ones aren't. And then all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, oh, he's got a brew git and a thing that's going to make him move more. And all of a sudden, like, he's like Superman out there, right? And it's hard to tell exactly like what some of those combos will lead to, because we've got a lot of min-maxers in this community space that really are going through and being like, this is the most amazing combo ever. And you just don't realize it until you see it on the table, right? So I can certainly sympathize there.
I guess one of the things that I hear a lot too, and it's I had a talk with somebody that's local here, and we got to it. And one of the things is that narrative doesn't mean just play bad, right? Like if you bring Rotmeyer Creed, but I really like ogres, right? Jason really likes his ogres, and you go play into his ogres, and he crushes you. That's what ogres do, right? Like it's not his fault that he likes it, and he shouldn't feel bad for it. So narrative doesn't mean play bad. It means have a story for why you're playing what you're playing. This became a really big deal in the beginning with AOS 3, where all the dragons were, right? I like dragons. If you were somebody else who likes dragons and you bought a whole thing of dragons and you took the time to build and paint and get them all ready to play, and then go sit down and play somebody with them, you deserve every right to play that super cool dragon list because you bought it with your work and your money. So go have some fun. Make a list about the extremist sect. They come out and they're gonna go wipe out your stuff because they're dragons, right? Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like you go kill dragons, and anybody who doesn't think that the red dragon from the new Dungeons and Dragons movie is adorable and didn't spark your interest in at least trying to get one dragon somewhere.
Spark your interest. I hear you. I see you.
But yeah, it's so cool. So I like Jade Obelisk. I think their story is super great. I have no illusions that when I put them on the table, I'm up for an uphill battle every time. But they're just so cool. And so I've agreed and understood to myself and was honest with myself, hey, I'm probably going to lose a lot of these games, but I'm going to have a lot of fun doing it because look at how cool these models are. And look at how much fun I've had just building and painting them. And that's fun. Like, that's where my fun is. If your fun is ogres, if your fun is Zangor Enlightened on disc, like, find a way. Like, you'll find a way to make them work. They might not win every game, but you'll have some fun. And it doesn't mean, you can play as soft or as hard as you want. Just understand that there's like consequences in the game for that, right? Like, if I'm going to chase down that unit of 8-bound that has Mortifactor helmets on it, I do understand that I'm probably missing better priority targets because they have helmets on them. It's not going to win me any games, probably, but it is going to make me feel a lot better at the end of the game.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things to kind of associate with this question too. So we play League, which is where we play the narrative version of this, which often allows you to pile on heroic traits and special weapons, and so you end up with tyrants that can, an ogre tyrant that can do, +2 or +3 damage to, than what their typical damage profile is. They can get an object that lets them, or heroic traits that lets them do an extra move or an extra attack per game, or that lets them bounce. Basically, every time they kill something, they can either make another move or another attack. So you get really like super powered heroes in the narrative version of this that put any straight optimized match playlist to shame. Like, so in narrative, we're often playing with bigger, badder things than you would find in a match play game, which sort of, I think, gives you some thick skin. Then a second kind of anecdote: when you're new to this game, it's hard to know where all the levers are to pull back, to soften the blow. And so, and I think that people who are coming from competitive and want to try narrative, which we want to be in like an open space for that, they don't necessarily know where those breaks are, or where to go down a gear. And so they know how to play the competitive. And so they're playing to win. And so then one of the things we do for that is that we create not disincentives, but we create less strong incentives for winning to be the most important thing. And so we often have multiple awards that we give, and we give them in names, right? Someone is, for having the most glory, or for slaying the most model, which means that after the game, not only did you take them off the table, but then they rolled bad on the injury and was slain, which the person who slayed them has no control over that dice roll, right? And so like there's a number of different things that we try and do to soften the incentive to play hard or to go hard. But even then, it's hard. It's not always known, unless you are a seasoned player, how to put on the brakes. And that's so I've run a lot of demos, and so I've figured out a few things that say, okay, I have to be the opposite of trying to win. I have to try and let them, like bingo card, play all of their things or try all of their special abilities in order for them to kind of get that experience, enjoy the game, and not be trying to win, and that sort of thing. And so I think as we grow this community, we've got 2 years at Adepticon. We think we'll probably have another 40 or maybe 50 players for this next year. But a lot of those people will come back and they'll be more seasoned, and they'll hear this episode, and they'll hear us talking on our podcast. And so that's, again, coming back to like, how do we use our platform and our spaces and our events to help people navigate narrative play in a way that mitigates, some of those clashes of big fighty optimized list versus, narrative fun fluffy list. And in the end, we hope that the two people across the table were nice enough to each other that it was cool.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, I went in with my Rottmeier Creed knowing like it was, I think actually as a bespoke warband, they're actually very good.
Very good.
Yeah.
But it's just hard when you're going up against, other ones that have allies and things like that, right? Which, I didn't have a problem with. It's just something that I noted, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and I'm glad you talked about this, when I'm running the GT, I'm telling all my players, bring your filthiest list.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you're setting the standard of like, bring your filthiest list, because if you don't, you're probably not going to win. But the goal is to win, right? Because it is a competitive grand tournament. And like the expectation's super easy. It gets really fluffy when it's like, well, it's narrative, and yes, there are ways to win, and yes, there's ways to win other ways, and
Right.
and so I like the idea of saying like, okay, how do we create the incentives to bring fun narrative lists versus, the one that's like, okay, I'm bringing my beefiest thing because I just want to win, right?
Yep.
And I think that if you've got that expectation from the beginning of like, hey, this is narrative, and here's what our goals are of like having a great narrative event, versus, I'm telling them my goals with the Nova Open is to determine one winner, that is the top and with the filthiest list, and congratulations, like you're the guy when you do it,
and everyone else is just a skull on top of which he's building his throne.
Corn is happy, Corn is very happy. So I love it. I love the idea of you guys setting that expectations and rewarding activities other than winning, because it's just not it's not always about that.
Right.
In narrative, of course.
Vint said something that I've been thinking about the last couple minutes, right? It comes down to what the player has in their head for the type of experience that they want to have when they come to the table. Because, if you have, and that's where the community grows, right? We grow, we mature as a community when it comes to competitive and narrative space. Because even if you go to a narrative game and somebody brings a highly basher list, and someone doesn't bring one that's so much so, if the other guy plays really hard and competitive, in his mind he's playing the way he wants to play. The other guy is, even if he's getting smashed up, he can still tell a story and see the story in being smashed up. So it's really about what you bring to the table when you want to play a narrative game, or what you bring to the table when you want to play a competitive game, which gets to another thing that Eric said, which is hopefully at the end of it you're all shaking hands and laughing and realizing that Warcry is a game about having fun. And if you got a bad game, you just reset the table and play for another 45 minutes and have a good one.
Right.
Yep.
I'll
Now,
take if I can
go
take a minute just to also kind of just put it out there. One of the things that we want to be when we create events is a space for anybody who wants to play this game to come, regardless of your experience. And I'll say the different tiers, like specifically the Adepticon game, where we've got, dozens of people. We want it to be as opening and welcoming of an experience for anybody, regardless of your experience, regardless of your race, ethnicity, your gender expression, whatever it is. Like, all of those things need to be as welcoming as possible. That means even if you're competitive, you're welcome at our narrative event. I don't want there to be a divide of like, hey, competitive or narrative is better than competitive, or competitive players don't know how to narrative, because I think everybody narratives a little bit. And it's just a matter of, figuring out how you want to play. And if we can introduce narrative to more people, that's what we want to do. So just to put it out there that we try and create our events to be as opening and welcome as possible. And kind of you opt into the kind of game and play that we put out there. And, like Josh talked about, we had our kind of broad, all comers narrative. And then in the evening we had a much more funky, weird setup type of game where everybody kind of buy into these scenarios are weird. Some of them aren't as tested as we'd like, but it's free So let's have fun together.
Yeah. And I definitely got that feeling from your event that it was welcome to everybody. And I played against a guy who was like his second game ever. It was his first tournament ever, right? And it was like, okay, great. I understand where we're at right now, and I'm going to be super helpful.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Because
Right.
I knew that he was like going to make a lot of mistakes, and just was like, okay, hey, you probably don't want to move him here. You probably want to, watch out for that.
Right. Yeah.
If you do that, this might happen, just so that I wasn't playing any kind of gotcha Warhammer with him. Right.
Sure.
And then my next game was against someone who was like, I will destroy you. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's play, and it was okay. Like it was fine. Right. Because we're having a good time.
And Justin, I appreciate that you stayed at both of those tables and you didn't.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So exactly, no one was calling me to come play at a different table. So
No.
So the thing I was gonna say is one great thing about Warcry, unlike like a 40K or an Age of Sigmar tournament, it takes you 3 days to play an Age of Sigmar grand tournament. Right. They'll have 2 days of regular stuff, and then if you make the final cut, you got to play on Sunday as well. It's the same way with 40K. You don't have the opportunity in these bigger games to play competitive and narrative. You have to choose one or the other. With Warcry, the great thing about it is I'm running the Warcry GT on Thursday. On Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there is open narrative that you can be playing there. And so you can do both in some of these small skirmish games, like Kill Team. You can do both. Warcry, you can do both. Shatterpoint,
Lord of the Rings,
you can do both.
Yeah.
What's that? Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings.
exactly.
Yeah. They did that at Adepticon. Those Lord of the Rings guys, like, here's our whole tournament. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the Battle for Helm's Deep. Let's go!
Yeah, exactly.
Super neat. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think some of these games that are coming out, like, you can have your cake and eat it too, right? Like, you can go do the really competitive one and scratch that itch, and then you can go do the fun. I'm bringing a funky list because I know that I played my guts out with my really super overpowered ogres the other day, right? And so that's the great thing I think about Warcry and some of these other games that maybe their tournaments don't last 3 days, so you can do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Can we leave Jason's ogres alone? I didn't mean to start funny, but it's been nonsense. Ogres are awesome. Ogres are super cool. They have poles with the new little, they got people up in their crow's nests. Like, it's super neat. I love ogres. They're fantastic.
Vint, we have created a narrative tonight that Jason's ogres are overpowered.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Justin has been traumatized.
we've been using Warcry as a backdrop because of Dogs of Warcry, but I think everything we've talked about tonight kind of applies to many different game systems there. But all right, so question for you guys: outside of Warcry, outside of 40K, let's even throw Lord of the Rings out since you just mentioned that, and not role-playing games. What other games have you played and thrown a narrative spin on top of?
Since I mentioned it earlier, Fallout Wasteland Warfare is something I kind of picked up at they have an Elder Scrolls game too, which is based on Skyrim. And one of the interesting things, of course, if you've played the games, they've got the characters from the games. It's kind of fun and you identify with them. But the system itself is set up very narratively. You can play, they played it competitively at Adepticon, but the quests are very they're kind of mixed, where sometimes you have to do skill checks to hack a computer, or sometimes you're searching for the box. And so you want a variety of models in your group in case you get a mission where, like, oh, I've got to go hack this computer to control the satellite and turn that off, or I've got my models have to run over here, distract him, but I've got to go over here and search these objectives and run away with something. So they're all very narrative and setup, which is kind of fun because it's already built in depending on which missions you get. And so I haven't tried it, but they have this, much like Warcry, where you now have encampments. In the Fallout, they have, you have your homes that you've been building this settlement, and they have these settlement quests. You can go out, you can have a narrative campaign where you're doing missions. You come back with money and resources. You build something in your settlement. Now you can take these certain weapons. Yeah. And just not this week, but 2 weeks ago, some of our local players set up a vault, with an MDF vault, and we played a multiplayer scenario where there's, we each had one character, and we found ourselves in the vault. We had to find out why we were there and escape, and the synth regulators were there to make sure we adhered to the rules and didn't cheat, and only one of us could leave. So it was a really fun, wacky off the ball game, but
cool.
The rules adjusted really easily to it. Yeah. So
and that was a homebrew scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I I run a league and a podcast on the on Warcry. I don't have time for other games, unfortunately. But I mean, I guess one of the things I like to do is, and kind of to our point earlier on, like, one little hook can mean everything. So I created a prototype for a what do we call it? The Talaxis, the Ayachotek ship, the crashed ship, and created a custom board that was sort of like this labyrinth. And I had based it off of a scenario I ran a couple years ago where it's made up of tiles, and every tile, if you bump a wall, has a chance of like rotating and completely changing how the board goes. And so it sort of becomes this labyrinth of shifting walls and stuff, and just coming with a couple mechanics. It's like super simple mechanics, physical spaces and terrain that sells it. And then you could play any game system you wanted in there and just have this rule where if you come in contact or so close with the wall, you roll and see if it shifts, and does it shift left or right. And it changes the mood of the game, right? It changes adds some randomness, et cetera, in there. And so in that regard, like, I think that system agnostic, you can run some of these scenarios, or you can come up with some homebrew stuff, or a board to play on that really just changes how you feel about the game, right? Or changes how the game, like how narrative it feels.
Yeah, we've run a few different events throughout the leagues too, which are intended to, they're multiplayer, they're unique, but you're throwing people in there and you're getting all sorts of variation. One, we had a double-decker board where you had to go down below and find some skulls and then get out. But somebody would try and kill you to take the skull, so they didn't have to go look for it. And so we just kind of
lazy
ways to bring people together, and because some people will form grudges and they'll go right at each other, where other people are going right for the objective and they're trying to get down there, and the other people are trying to wait for them to get the objective and then taking advantage of that. So you get a really unique interplay of different tactics and stuff like that for those kinds of games.
Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's some games that really naturally lend themselves to narrative play. I don't know if you guys have ever played Frostgrave.
I've heard of it. Yep.
Yeah,
I watched some videos on it.
I mean, it's an amazing game. It's super simple, but like that just screams for narrative, right? Like it just screams for it. And part of it is because I don't think that it is set up very well to be competitive, in a sense, right? Like it can be so kind of wonky sometimes that it'd be hard to be competitive, but the narrative play of it, like, I think just like shines really well. And we just picked up Vince Venturella's Majestic 13 game that he published.
Nice.
We had him on the show just a couple episodes ago talking about that, and that is another one I think screams like play me narratively, like
Totally.
instead of like a competitive flavor, right? I think Games Workshop, just inherently with its points and its rules and its things like that, like people naturally gravitate towards the competitive play of it. But I think that the campaign rules, or like the spec op rules that Kill Team has, or the
General's Handbooks
Crusade rules of 40K or something like that, like you can definitely like push those competitive games into the narrative space, and those are tools I think that help allow you to give flavor, narrative flavor to your games, right? And kind of continues it, instead of just playing, a 3-hour game and be like, okay, well, shake your hands, we'll see you next week. It's like, okay, well, what happened in between and stuff like that, right? It's that connective tissue, I guess. But I want to ask you guys, and this is probably the last question of the night. If I were a brand new guy and I'm just like, oh man, like I want to play, Legion or whatever game, but I want to set up a narrative league for my friends. Like, what is the most pertinent advice that you would give that new player that's really trying to like do it to them? Like, what's the one thing that they should take away from this podcast and be able to set it up?
Well, I'll just quickly say the last episode of season 5 of the Dogs of Warcry is an episode on setting up a league or building a gaming group around a game
Nice.
system.
So listen to season 5. Got it.
Season 5, episode 8. That's the one move you need to do. I mean, at the and I'll say that we can maybe each give an answer, and that's our. So for me, I think our kind of number one step is you need at least one other person who is moderately interested in this game. Maybe not as much as you are, because sometimes you have to be the motivator, the engine, the heart of it. But you need to start with at least 2 people that are gonna have a good time and kind of play the game almost no matter what, as you wait for other people to catch on, or as you kind of encourage other people to catch on, because it's easier to pull more people into, sort of like, you get more gravity. The more gravity you have, it's easier to pull people into a gaming group and start a league and do that sort of stuff. So that's maybe my first piece of advice.
Find your people.
Find a people.
Yeah.
Go for it, Vint.
One of the other things is play regularly and play out. This is your hobby. You enjoy it. Nobody gets to tell you, no, you can't enjoy this. It's Warcry. You're out $60 and 45 minutes a week. Like, find some time, go play somewhere, and tell all your friends about it, right? Like everything, it's a conversation. So have that conversation, right? Hey, Jason, I know you're really into 40K. You got time to try Warcry? I have all this stuff. We'll play right before our 40K game. It's going to be awesome. All it's going to do is extend 45 minutes before your tank list is going to come bust me up, and I'm going to be a bunch of dead world eaters all over the place because your mortifactors are just so cool. I don't know what to do. So we'll get this 5-minute game out of the way, and then we'll go do this other thing and make the conversation, right? Jason, I know you play ogres, and they're so cool. And so, oh my gosh, I broke the rules. Sorry, Eric. Josh, to you.
Don't. I mean, really, I think have fun. I think use your imagination. You come up with your world building, and people will see you having a good time. They'll hear you laughing. They'll when they come up and ask you about it, you'll have these stories that you can share, and that's that really like it piques their interest. They're like, oh, I want to be part of that. And I think that enthusiasm is contagious, and you kind of create that space, and people want to be part of it.
I've got a second one. If Vint, you want to do your second one to justify my second one.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I did
We have
2
time
in
for
mine.
2 each. We have time for 2 each.
So my next one would be learn to run demo games, and sort of fall on the sword with them, and make sure that like focus on helping other people have a fun first experience, so they fall in love with the gameplay, the mechanics, the models they brought, or something like. Focus on that as opposed to schooling noobs.
Yeah.
Anybody
Josh,
else got
do
a
your
second
thing?
Like pressure here. I wasn't ready.
He shut down.
Go, Vint.
That was
Go
all.
next. I'm gonna think of something else.
I mean, the other thing, right? We talked about playing regularly and then having a conversation, right? Have that conversation with the people you know and care about, because they're your friends. You already have conversations with them about the things they know and care about. Maybe today we play Frostgrave. Maybe tomorrow we play Warcry. As long as we're playing, let's talk to other people. We'll build more friends. We'll get more friends in to do it. Go different places, maybe not the same place every week. I play at a coffee shop sometimes, right? After hours, I'll get the staff together and I'll be like, cool, we're all going to play this weekend. We're all going to play, maybe next week is Trivial Pursuit. We'll do the science edition just for you, Mr. Science major. I'm really good at college stuff. But yes, like it's a conversation. So give and take, right? Listen and respond.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of like tabletop gaming, having painted models and terrain is it attracts the eye, but it's nice to have. I don't think it's necessary, but in line with that, in terms of like you should feel comfortable taking baby steps, right? So you can start with a small, okay, we're going to play this one game. We're going to add this one thing on top of us. If we play the next game, we'll add the next set of rules. Or even like, my family and I would like to play Zombicide and, the fantasy version. But it was like, okay, well, we want to make this a little bit more narrative. So we get to keep one item from each campaign as we go to the next one. So you can add like a little layer to it that's not within the rules, but it makes it more interesting. And like, okay, my character's evolving as we continue to move through the city and fight these zombies. And, so you can do just like little tweaks and things that don't necessarily have to adhere to the perfect system that draws that interest and keeps people engaged.
So break some rules.
Yeah, feel free to break.
Mix them up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Within reason.
It's all made up in the end.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, I think if you are playing regularly, you've got your people that you found, you're taking advantage of those campaign rules that are in some of these rule sets. You're coming up with a backstory, and what's happening can kind of come naturally, right? I like to say that when you answer a lot of the questions, so I'm a communications, employee communications. That's what I do for my work.
Nice.
And a lot of times I have to write, blog posts or emails or something like that. And if I can answer kind of the who, what, where, when, why questions, the piece ends up writing itself, right? Like I actually don't have to do a lot of the work of writing because I kind of already know the answers to the questions. So I think if you have your people, you've got your rule set, you've got some of the campaign rules right there. You're already answering half the questions there. You just may need to answer like, okay, well, why are these people here? Like, what are they doing? And once you start to answer those questions, the campaign will sort of, the narrative will sort of generate itself, and then you can just continue to build on it as you play, which I think is pretty amazing. Yeah. So, but thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, the fellows from the Dogs of Warcry podcast. We will definitely put your links down in the description below. Season 5, episode 8 is 8, right? You said, yeah. Listen to that one because obviously that's the one that we all need to listen to.
The last 5 minutes of this one, really, it's up to you.
Exactly. But thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming on. I'm so glad that we connected at Adepticon and that we were able to have you on here with us. So we appreciate your insight and we appreciate your humor and good looks, of course.
Well, and your first impression when we met at Adepticon, you said, "Hey, I couldn't get into this one, but I'm on the waiting list." You say the word, my buddy Jason will call me, and I will quit what I'm doing, and I will run over here. I don't. You make. I have to imagine you make every event organizer feel that special.
Right. And I'm a man of my word.
Yes.
I quit that event.
Proven.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like they had the whole thing set up and they're like, okay, it's your turn. And Jason calls me and I'm like, ah! And I came.
Yeah, when you waitlist for an event, you mean it.
Right.
I mean,
That's right.
I mean it, gosh darn it. I mean it. So, but thank you guys so much for coming on. It was a pleasure having you on here. To all our listeners, this is the Dogs of Warcry podcast that has joined us. Please go check out their stuff. They got a new season that they're going to be starting here in just a little bit. And if you're not familiar with them, you got 5 seasons to catch up on. So put them in your podcast list and start listening and check out their website. They've always got great stuff and great ideas and things that they're running. So, and of course, look for them next Adepticon because they'll be running the Warcry events there, and they did a phenomenal job last time. I can't wait to do it again. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, our listeners, and we'll see you all at the tables. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks.